So we've got, over the past couple of weeks, we've been having demonstrations across the world in support of Black Lives Matter, which was triggered, not, the demonstrations aren't because of George Floyd, but I think that was the straw that broke the camel's back. And that was, I think that his video and his sort of subsequent killing just enraged the world and sort of awoken a consciousness among people of all colours that, wow, this is an act of wickedness beyond all measure. So if I can talk about it in the UK, there has been a change now that they were first marching and talking about Black Lives Matter, but then the emphasis moved towards statues. There was a statue out in Bristol by one of their most famous sons called Colson, who was very wealthy, but he made his wealth as a slave trader, shipping over 80,000 slaves from Africa to the UK and beyond, having almost 14,000 die and thrown overboard. And he was a big philanthropist and donated a large portion of his wealth to his native town of Bristol. And they've erected a massive monument in the town centre to sort of pay honour to him, and named a number of buildings after him. Now, I've never been to Bristol, I've never known much about that, but it hit the headlines mainly now because there's been a lot of people who've been upset about the fact that this person who made his money as a slave trader is so recognised. And I think that was the focal point of the Black Lives Matter, I wouldn't say it, the march and demonstration in Bristol, and they tore down the statue. And I think that triggered this sense of, well, let's go and look around the rest of the UK and look at other statues that we should tear down. And unfortunately, that has become the distraction. It's become the distraction because this movement and this movement that we've got here isn't about statues. It isn't about tearing down history. It isn't about discarding people like Churchill and others. But it's about truth. Tearing down a statue of Winston Churchill or anyone else is not going to change my life. Tomorrow I'm not just going to be given equal opportunity within my workplace or my field. If Churchill's statue has been pulled down, we're not all of a sudden just going to get more black coaches coaching in football, or we're not just going to get more black men and women elected into the boardroom or in the Conservative Party or in government as cabinet members. That statue is not going to make a change or difference to that. So then the question is, why have they made that the focal point? Why have they decided that, well, this is what we need to do? Because then that becomes a distraction. So as a Christian, I read the Bible. And the Bible is full of characters who have had a past. One such one is King David. You know, he was known as a great one. He was known as somebody who had his heart dedicated to walking with God. And everyone reads his Psalms now. But he wasn't perfect. He had an affair with a man's wife, got her pregnant, plotted to kill the man so that he could cover up what he did. That was King David. We've got some of the disciples. Matthew, he was a tax collector. So we're not talking about the Inland Revenue or tax service today. In those days, a tax collector meant that they were almost like the mob. They take your money, half for themselves, and then, you know, half for the to the government. But they'll take bribes. You know, they were sort of the worst kind of people that you want around. As I said, just think about the mob, and that's how the tax collectors were. About Matthew, and we have Paul, Apostle Paul, and this is just the New Testament I'm going through, who hated Christians, wanted them dead, just, you know, went after them with a passion. When Stephen, who did nothing wrong, he proved, okay, you stone him and let me hold up to your coast to make sure you can really make sure you get him. He wanted to go around the world and arrest Christians. That's Paul. So that's his past, but he had a difference. And I think one of the things that I wish that society would take from the Bible is that they didn't lie about history. They showed the good and the bad. But the people who committed the bad, in some cases, changed. And in other cases, like Solomon, you know, he went from being dedicated and serving to a point where he says, yeah, you know what, I'm wise beyond, I don't care, I can do what I want to do. So you've got people who've gone from being good to being bad, and from people who've gone from bad to being good. King Saul was another one. So there's a mixture, and no one takes away that history. No one's there saying, oh yeah, you know, we need to, this person was a womanizer, we need to remove them from history, or they owned slaves. No, it's about truth. And I would hope that in this debate that we start learning about truth. Let's learn about Churchill, the good, as a wartime hero who, you know, really stood up to the face of tyranny against all odds, really inspired a nation. But yes, he might have had a checkered past. But then when you're teaching history, you teach both sides. And you can teach courage in one side, but teach also how not to have negative views about a different group, ethnic group. Throughout history, you know, there's probably other people who were tyrants, did bad, but maybe they did some good, but we kind of decide, you know, we don't want to talk about that. And I don't know. I don't know about any other person. But I hope that what we don't do is distract and start looking at statues, start causing conflict over history. You know, they wanted to take down the episode of Fawlty Towers, the Germans, one of my favorites. And in that episode, his doctor in the 70s was black. Where's the mention of that? They had a black doctor treating Basil Fawlty in the hospital. At a time when you won't see black representation mostly on TV, that show did. And the comments that they were offended by was something that Major said about the West Indian cricket team, but Basil Fawlty attacked him for having those racist views. And all of a sudden it was like, oh, let's quickly panic, let's just take it down. And it's like, no. I'm glad that corporations and the media are reflecting on their part and what they have to do. But I hope that they don't do what's happened during the Harvey Weinstein situation, where it was a quick reaction. You know, the Hollywood, the Oscars decided, let's just quickly get rid of him and pass a law to get rid of him. But then thinking, oh goodness, if we quickly rush and do this, what happens to others who get accused of abusing women or any racial injustice? Oh, how they quickly rushed and got rid of the Cosby Show because of his past. Why throw the baby out with the bathwater? Take your time and reflect and think. Take your time, reflect and rethink and say, okay, what can we do wrong? How can we change what we've done? Let the cast of Little Britain explain how they felt when they were making it. I like how Keith Lemon has come out and says, yeah, you know what, maybe he went a step too far with his caricature of Craig David and Michael Jackson, and feeling remorse because they think, well, maybe I was being insensitive and I don't know how it felt like. And that's good. We don't need to go around counseling, we just need people to think, maybe, you know, we didn't think. And so I just hope going forward that there is more of a discussion, no rash actions. I like the fact that people, the companies and like in the US, Congress is willing to make changes. Police reform, that's very different. But if you rush something, it will never be great, because you're only doing it from one point of time. So I feel guilty about what I've done. We're going to quickly do this. Consult, talk to the people who have been offended and say, how do we make amends? How do we make atonement? How do we atone for our mistakes and make sure we don't do them again? This has gone longer than I had thought and hoped for. But I just wanted to say, let's not move, let's change the distraction from going after statues. And let's focus on truth, history. Let's look at history and let's talk about all elements of it. Keep the statues up, but let's understand the truth behind all these people, and let's work towards understanding that the movement of Black Lives Matter is not that we don't care about any other life, but for over 400 years the Black lives have been treated as second-class citizens anywhere they've gone. In fact, not even as humans. The fact that in a country like the United Kingdom, who says, no, things are fine here, we're not as bad as America, probably the issues we have is more institutional, where it just keeps us from progressing. Where if one goes through, then they review and change the system so that no one else can go through. And so these are things that need to be addressed. And I hope that we remove ourselves from the distraction of tearing down statues and finding holes in famous historic figures. Telling the truth about them, learning from their mistakes, but also bringing the truth and the history of the Black men and women who before us endured the most horrendous hardship. Take care.